For this project, I looked to inquire as to the manner in which Renaissance men were able to have a variety of careers and interests, with a special emphasis on those dealing with the humanities. I will utilize primary sources such as letters, memoirs, and autobiographies, detailing the lives of a few Italian men in the 15th and 16th centuries. My samples of memoirs include a Florentine patrician as well as a textile merchant. The autobiographies include a notable book written by a prominent sculptor as well as that written by lesser artists. Besides providing biographical information, these texts open broader questions about the education, culture, and morals surrounding those living in this time period. What do the authors wish to convey in their works? How do these texts and the cultural tenets they emphasize shed light on the multi-potentiality of many individuals living in Renaissance Italy? How can we, in the modern era, emulate these values? The Renaissance person: education, multi-potentiality, and self-representation in Renaissance Italy. When looking at the Renaissance era in Italy, a period that lasted between the 14th and 17th centuries, a notable feature of the time was the ability of men to work in various sectors. How is it that men were able to be renowned poets, sculptors, painters, politicians, philosophers, businessmen, mathematicians, etc., all in the span of one lifetime? How did the society of the time allow and encourage this behavior, especially through the outlet of education? What culturally important ideas molded this thinking? Petrus Paulus Vergerius in 1404 created the Treatise De Ingeniis Moribus, in which he outlines his unique philosophy regarding education as a union of the classical enthusiasm with Christianity, which has been the ideal of humanist education ever since. Vergerius argues that the duties of a parent to their child include seeing that he can be trained in sound learning, for no wealth, no possible security against the future, can be compared with the gift of an education in grave and liberal studies. Vergerius believes that the foundation of education must be laid in the first years of life, as a child can never remedy the neglect of early education. Vergerius' first lesson in that of education concerns character, self-discipline being at the core of all virtue. But in no case is it allowable to eat, drink, or sleep up to the point of complete satisfaction. In all bodily pleasures, we must accustom our children to retain complete and easy control of the appetite. Additionally, Christian values were of the utmost importance, and these ideologies were implanted in children beginning at birth. Vergerius outlines liberal studies he believes are essential to the education of every young boy. He defines liberal studies as that which are worthy of a free man, those studies by which we attain and practice virtue and wisdom, that education which calls forth, trains, and develops those highest gifts of body and of mind. Vergerius makes the claim that we should not have attained wisdom in our later years unless in our earliest we have sincerely entered on its search. Wisdom, in this time period, was seen as a virtue that needed to be strove for starting at childhood, as it is best that guidance should mold our natures while they are still plastic. Vergerius argues for the power of literature and compels his students to immerse themselves in books, as they have the ability to divert our thoughts from unworthy or distressing themes. Literature contains vast stores of knowledge, for our delight, it may be, or for our inspiration. In them are contained the records of the great achievements of men, the wonders of natures, the works of providence in the past, the key to her secrets of the future. In regard to the subjects he defines as liberal studies and the arts that should be pursued, Vergerius suggests history, on the grounds both of its attractiveness and of its utility, qualities which appeal equally to the scholar and to the statesman. Next in importance ranks moral philosophy, which indeed is, in a peculiar sense, a liberal art, in that its purpose is to teach men the secret of true freedom, and the third main branch of study being eloquence. Vergerius quotes the four courses of training laid in place by the Greeks: letters, gymnastics, music, and drawing, which he then agrees with all but drawing, as it belongs to the painter's profession. Letters, however, deserves a special spot, as Vergerius believes it is a study adapted to all times and to all circumstances, to the investigation of fresh knowledge or to the recasting and application of old. The art of disputation or logic was imperative, followed by the art of poetry, as well as music, arithmetic, geometry, stars, and nature. Vergerius shatters stereotypes by assigning the role of disciplines to three professions: medicine, law, and theology, which students were required to be acquainted with, but not have a thorough mastery, as thorough mastery of even one of them might fairly be the achievement of a lifetime. Vergerius, in outlining the ideal method of education for the time period, provides insight into what was desirable by society. It was important that students have knowledge in all areas and were considered well-rounded by modern standards. By encouraging this method of learning, especially from a young age, students were experienced in various skills, from science and math to art and poetry. The level of discipline assigned to the task of teaching and learning illuminates the value Italian societies placed on education of young boys, by specifically stating each topic that should be studied and the reason for which it should be reviewed. Gregorio ensures that he creates a guideline by which following generations might learn. The roles of both the humanities and the sciences within the outlines of education formulate the basis by which Renaissance men lived their lives. By not conditioning students to one discipline over another, the education system of the time allowed men to excel in any and every area throughout their lives, and be knowledgeable in any field presented to them. Gregorio's work outlines not only what the education of young men during the time looked like, but also sets the stage for these men to utilize their diverse education in various fields throughout their lives. The culture surrounding Italy during this time varies vastly from modern culture. Christianity played a large role in individuals' lives, and much of their education, morals, values, etc. relied on these principles. The religion shaped their political views, educations, and marriages. The Catholic Church dominated the political scene, and even finances were viewed through the lens of Christianity. Within the confines of education, religion played an important role. Students were taught to view life through a theological lens, and learning was often done in Christian settings. What was learned alongside faith, and these two things relied heavily on one another. Religion altered what was known about the natural world, and what was gleaned from nature presented itself in the way religious texts were analyzed. Education was highly prioritized during this time period. If parents were able to afford educating their child, it was expected that the child would be educated. Education was not seen as a private affair, but a public one. Gregorio shares that the education of children is a matter of more than private interests. It concerns the state, which indeed regards the right training of the young in certain aspects within its proper sphere. Learning was done on initiative, as learning depends largely on ourselves, according to Gregorio, and brings with it its own abiding reward. The emphasis placed on education reveals the values of the era. Men in good standing within a state were able to be considered for political positions, as often these positions were not based upon popular vote, but upon random selection. It was civic duty to serve the state in any position you might be called upon to fill. Doing such required that the state raise up generations of educated leaders that would be fit to hold political office. However, not all education during this time period was done within a school. Education was not discriminative. Gregorio Dottie, born in 1362, writes in his memoir, "On 15th April of 1375, when I had learned enough arithmetic, I went to work in the silk merchant's shop belonging to Giovanni de Gianni and his partners. I was 13 years old, and I won their esteem." While Dottie received no formal education of any kind, save the arithmetic he learned, he was by no means seen as lesser in the eyes of the state. He ran several successful business operations, had many esteemed wives, and held various political offices. In comparison, Buonaccorso Pitti, born 1353, was born into a wealthier family, and therefore received many of the jobs he worked via inheritance. However, in 1375, being young, around 22, inexperienced, and eager to see something of the world, I joined forces with Matteo dello Scaltolini, a merchant and a great gambler. We went to Genoa, Pavia, back to Genoa, and on to Nice and then Avignon. Throughout the Renaissance, education was not limited to the formal classroom, but accepted and encouraged to travel and experience as teachers. While Pitti does not detail his education, his memoirs indicate that he was well versed in math and business, and was able to speak both Italian and French, and understood and can read and write in Latin. These two different men shed a light on the practical uses of education. Their educational backgrounds allowed them the business opportunities they had and the ability to maintain these ventures successfully. Throughout his memoir, Dottie reveals only the schematics behind his many businesses, as well as the dates and dowries of his wife, and the births and deaths of his many, many children. In this way, Dottie presents a memoir as it is usually seen, a journal that reveals business dealings to his descendants, so that they may understand, learn from, and carry on the family tradition. Pitti, in breaking away from the traditional memoirs, shines light on the culture surrounding the wealthy in Italy, specifically in Florence. His many travels, encounters with royalty, and political strife illuminate the culturally important aspects of life as a businessman. In this way, Pitti's journal conveys a more honest approach to life in the 14th century and what it entailed. Dottie and Pitti both embody the idea of multipotentiality within their lives, as they led various business ventures, and in Pitti's case, lived closely among many powerful and influential people of the day. Within my research, the next step is to analyze the impacts of education via the lens of the most notable autobiography, that of Benvenuto Cellini. This work not only details specifically one person's experience with education, but also reveals the culture surrounding Italy during the Renaissance era. Afterwards, a learning of other various artists and the education they received prior to starting their field is important. Thank you.